Hello, insiders. Welcome to a new installment of the EU Bubble Insider podcast. I'm your host, Krzysztof Bulski, and I'm very thrilled to welcome our today's guest, Ryszard Pawlik, who is the political advisor to one of the most prominent MEPs in the European Parliament. Ryszard, it's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome.
Likewise. Thank you for inviting me.
Well, I introduced you. I introduced you as the political advisor of one of the most prominent MEPs, but I should also add the most active MEPs in the European Parliament. And I was wondering if we could maybe start with a short explanation of what it is actually you do in your role, what this role of the political advisor means, and what your actual job is in the European Parliament.
Well, my main responsibility is to indeed support, as you said, Mr. Buzek in his daily work as a member of ITRE committee. I think it's fair to say, and this is by no means a exaggeration, that ITRE committee is one of the key committees in the European Parliament. It legislates on industrial policy, on space policy, on EU research and innovation policy, on energy policy, obviously, as well as on the application of digital technologies and cybersecurity. So I think we can agree that these are all key areas of the EU economy, for the EU economy. And personally, I'm specializing in energy, climate, and industrial policies of the European Union. And working with Mr. Buzek, I had an opportunity to be involved in elaborations and negotiations of substantial number of key EU legislative files in these fields. I would name here the ETS directive revision, actually twice already, the Just Transition Fund regulation, proposals for the EU electricity market design in previous term, and of course all gas-related legislation, so the security of gas supply regulation, the gas directive revision, and most recently, very recently actually, the gas storage regulation, as well as the hydrogen and gas package, But of course, I mean, this job is not only about legislation, closely following the work of ITRE committee, but also it's about preparing briefings for some of Mr. Buzek's meetings, or drafting some speaking points, lines to take, sometimes even articles or speeches, which is actually, by the way, perhaps favorite part of my job for me personally. But I really like it all.
And I assume there's also a lot working with media and journalists. And just one thing made me wonder if, because it is, and it always has been, one of the most important committees in the European Parliament. But would you say that the last 2-3 years changed the interest of the non-industry media, so that there is maybe more interest from general national journalists who usually wouldn't report so much about energy, about the legislation behind it, or did nothing change? I assume it did.
No, of course it changed a lot, and I would even say that even looking at my personal meetings with friends, for example, I really can't recall that we would discuss so often issues of like how to avoid too high energy bills, what to do to improve energy efficiency of our building, and so on and so on. So this is a very relevant topic, and indeed you can also see that media are much more interested in it. For example, I mentioned the electricity market design. I mean, in previous term, it was really difficult to explain to journalists, even those who are following energy topics and EU legislation, why it's so important and what is it all about. And now, as you know, everyone is awaiting the Commission's proposal in March, and I'm pretty sure that it will be much broader, covered by media all over the Europe than it was previously.
Your job, your work is very much influenced by the rhythm of the work of your MEP, of the MEP you support. And is there anything like a typical day in your work, or does it differ? Could you give us a sort of peek into how a typical day at your work looks or may look like?
Yeah, it's very good question, because I mean, I'm afraid that the typical day, as you said, is something that I'm afraid does not really exist in my job. As you mentioned, it really depends very much on Mr. Buzek's agenda, but also, of course, of the European Parliament's calendar, whether it's committee, for example, it's a week of committee work, or a week of political group meetings, or a plenary session when we are not even in Brussels, but we have to travel for days to Strasbourg, 12 times a year. So of course it influences greatly our work. But if I were to tell you, or to try to tell you about it in the shortest possible way, I would perhaps describe it as 3M. 3M stands for meetings, mobile, mails, and as I said before, I mean, of course, for example, there's a lot of activity related to legislative work, but at the end of the day, this legislative work is also a consequence of, for example, many meetings we have with stakeholders, the European Commission, representatives of different political groups in the European Parliament, representatives of member states, and when you are collecting ideas, views, trying to understand what you should or should not do, and then of course you try to somehow translate it into the legislative work. But I would say that the core is really like meetings, online, offline, also chats over the phone. There are days when I really hate my phone. I cannot stand it anymore. So I'm not sure if it did not disappoint you, but it's maybe nothing very special, but yeah, that's how in a nutshell it looks like.
So percent-wise, how much control would you say you have over your calendar, and how much is it influenced by things that you have no control over?
Well, I think it's not that bad. Of course, it's still politics and international relations. So, I mean,
anything can happen.
Yeah, exactly, always. And certain, unpredictability is somehow enshrined in this process and in this work. But I think, well, it's not that bad. I would say 70% of certainty to 30% of, but of course there are days when, it's not about percentages, but there might be a day and week which this 30% changes everything, So it's, but it's really not that bad. If you know how to manage, you can also predict some of developments, and prepare yourself, and then perhaps it's easier.
I asked this question also to Roland Freudenstein, who you know very well, and he laughed when I asked that question, and that was if he would call his job a 9-to-5 job. and obviously your reaction is similar. And as you know, we all have our lives outside of work, which jobs like this tend to overtake, dominate. I wanted to ask if you have some good ways to disconnect from a job that, even though if you don't have your phone with you, it occupies your head all the time. So how do you disconnect? How do you recharge? Maybe you have some tips to share.
Well, first of all, I would like to be very honest that sometimes it's very difficult to do. I mean, maybe it's a personal issue, and of course, it's, depends, but I think that if you are committed to what you are doing, you are involved. Sometimes it's really impossible, even if you would like to disconnect, to disconnect entirely. But of course, I try to do that, and I think I would name three ways. What helps me to disconnect and recharge batteries, and also clear mind and look, let's say, on Brussels bubbles from different perspective. So first is of course family, and having two sons, 6 and 4 years old. I really try to spend with them as much time as possible, and well, it's important for me, and even if you are tired afterwards, it's a completely different tiredness, it really helps. Second thing, we took a decision that we moved from, we live outside Brussels, and of course, there are pros and cons of this solution, but to me, it's really, this 20 minutes by train each way. It's first of all kind of time that I'm clearing my mind in the morning, preparing mentally for what awaits me in the office, and in the afternoon, like trying to really, when I arrive to Brixen-Sart train station, it's kind of like logging off from Brussels bubble and logging into completely new reality, and it really helps. And third thing, maybe I would surprise you. It's not very obvious, but I have been running with a group of close friends for several years now, a charity organization, a foundation in Poland, and of course, because I'm based mainly in Brussels, so I contribute online, but today it's quite possible, but I really like it because it gives you, as I said, a different perspective. Sometimes reminds ourselves that we are quite lucky with all our challenges and problems, but we are quite lucky, and that we can try to share, let's say, some of this luck with others, and again, like a little bit with kids. It's of course it's also time consuming. You can be tired afterward, but it's completely different tiredness, and it gives you, I believe, very much needed different perspective on what we are doing. Work is very important, but as they say, you work to live, not live to work. So you have to try to at least remember about it.
What I think is for me important in what you set up for yourself is the diverse and balanced set of activities. So there is family, there is charity, and there's also this simple thing that I think we came to realize how important it is over the 2 years of the pandemic, that working remotely especially if you have a family at home, because if you're a single person or if you don't have kids, it may be different. I don't know that experience because I have kids, and this situation where you can disconnect from work at home and from home at work, it's for your well-being, for your mental health. I think it's something that that cannot be underestimated. And I thought a lot about this based on my learnings from the entire remote work, and it's not good.
I agree because I mean there are advantages and disadvantages, but I remember that at certain moment it was. I mean, for me, my home was always like my home is my castle, right? And so exactly, you enter the home, and even if you have to do some, work in the evening, it's it's something very marginal, and you do not really relate your home to work. And after several months of pandemic, I realized that somehow, it's not that I don't like to stay at home, but I don't really understand whether it's home, work. Also,
Exactly.
We had to adjust with kids again, sometimes to work in a very different, to share time with when I was taking care of kids, my wife. So actually, I had the impression that I'm working all the time and not working at all at the same time because so I think this kind of focus, although I like to telework and I still do that, and I really think that this is one of the, if you can call it achievements or gains of the pandemic, that I think everyone realizes that teleworking does not mean that it's like extra unofficial leave day, but you can really be sometimes even more efficient actually at home again than in the office. But I think as a general rule, I agree that at least this possibility, I think maybe that's, always choice is important in life. So if in pandemics, we did not have choice, right? We had to stay at home. And I think that was something that was maybe difficult. Now, if I can choose whether it's more convenient, for example, today I decided to stay at home, and that's fine. But tomorrow, on Wednesday, Thursday, I will be in the office, and I can just plan it, and then I think it's easier.
If it's an option, then I absolutely agree. Gives you flexibility and gives you also, again, if you are a parent, sometimes gives you the option to be more efficient, because sometimes you have to stay at home and still do some work. Although let's not be too optimistic. Working with kids at home is not the same thing.
As one say, what is crucial in working with kids at home, that kids are not at home. No. So
yes.
It's
I couldn't agree more. Ryszard, and one thing that also was a big part of my previous interview with Anna Gumbau about her work as a journalist was that the pandemic made it very difficult to build relationships with her sources, with contacts. So probably your observation is similar, that building relationships with stakeholders, which is a very important part of your job, if not the most important, to have good relationships with people you deal with. I would like to start this topic with a very simple question: how do you build relationships with stakeholders? How do you approach building relationships that are good, and let's not be afraid of this word, healthy relationships?
Well, yeah, we both come from Poland, I think you will agree that still after so many years, I mean, even if you work in public affair or public consultancy, you don't use word lobbying. No, you do that in Brussels, but in Poland there is still kind of I think, not really needed resistance to it, but because I think, again, the whole point is, as you said, that these relations should be healthy. And I would say as long as stakeholders approach us in a transparent way, respecting all rules and code of conduct, I really think that that they are very important part of what we are doing in the European Parliament, maybe even crucial part, as a matter of fact, because after all, whatever decisions are made, whatever new legislation is introduced, it has to be implemented by certain stakeholders. It should normally serve also their purposes, rather help them also to achieve some goals. I mean, if of course they are important for society and economy, and therefore, I mean, talking to them, trying to understand what are actually their concerns. Sometimes it's a lot of misunderstanding, and so I mean, you have to invest your time, but sometimes it's really worth like spending 30 minutes with someone and explaining that actually what he or she is afraid of is not really the case, right? And so all the actions they want to propose to undertake are not really necessary. Of course, very often, I would say, majority of cases, they have a very correct assessment of the situation and how it can impact them. But then again, it's a question. I always, Mr. Buzek is also always underlying it. I would say try to Europeanize your problem, right? It's if you are coming as a single company, even umbrella organization, industry association, and saying for my company, even for my sector, or in my member state, this or that provision is problematic. Of course, I mean it's important to know, but then, since I mean we are thinking about whole EU single market or internal energy market in energy, for example. Let's see whether others have the same problem or maybe different, and it really then helps to see if any solution is needed, and if needed, then what kind of solution, right? So I would say the stakeholders that are coming already presenting, it also helps to kind of confront them and check if they say, okay, it's not only relevant for steel industry, but for example, for fertilizers industry. So I can immediately approach someone from fertilizers industry and also check whether it's really the case, right? And have a broader view or perspective. And also, I think what I appreciate in relations with stakeholders, I mean, assessment of the let's say initial legislative proposal, for example, is important, whether you like it or not. But then you have to remember that this legislative process in the EU takes normally 1.5 to very often even more than 2 years, and of course this proposal changes. So you have to be somehow creative, flexible, open-minded, and react to developments, right? Because if you stick to your initial statement, assessment, initial proposals, then at certain moment you are kind of out of discussion, right? Because there are some compromise solutions which are developed, and either you manage to find yourself and say, okay, this solution is somehow better or worse, or we think it can be done in a different way. Then it helps, and if you just stick to your initial position, I mean, you may be right, but it's not something that I think stakeholder will be successful, and what helps us as people who are involved in the legislative process. So like having this updated feedback, let's say, from.
But that also means that what is really important to always have this long-term approach to lobbying for any policy area, and I think this is also one of the reasons why so many companies, stakeholders choose to lobby through specific topic related associations or coalitions. So it's always better to have something organized, some organized form, and a long-term process planned out, because even if you are as a political advisor of an MEP, and each MEP has his own team, each committee has people that have to be contacted. It's all about long term. I think you would agree that this is the only way to make sure that your arguments are really understood and are taken into consideration.
I agree. I would also agree that it's much better to have kind of solution-based approach than problem-based approach. So I mean, it's two sides of the same coin, you could say. But if you are coming, or if someone is coming to us, and okay, it's always about a challenge or problem, right? Because if there is no issue, well, maybe there is no reason to meet. So it's always clear that there is a challenge, but I really am amazed, and I mean, it depends from country to country, from industry to industry, but some industries are, coming more like, okay, in this legislation, and it's not about, don't get me wrong, it's not about asking for a very specific, magic solution that would help this company to earn a lot of money, right? It's more about like systemic approach that from our point of our industry, let's introduce this or that solution because that would help us, for example, to scale up or develop or overcome some other challenges in a constructive way. And it's, I mean, of course, you can agree with that or not, but it's still much better than just coming, sitting and saying, well, we have a problem, right? Okay, it's also a message, but then I think it's also...
Then who should come up with a solution, right?
Exactly, because and then you are coming up with a solution, and they say no, it's still a problem. No, so then it's much. So as I said, it's better to have this solution-based approach, and also I think it's more and more rare nowadays. But I remember, let's say few years ago, you could still meet some representatives from companies, mainly from our part of Europe, actually, maybe not entirely yet understanding how this legislative process looks like, and their solution would be just to abandon the a certain directive or regulation or provision, and it's not really the way how it works in Brussels. No, so first is, as you said, it's even more relevant for the European Commission, maybe not that much for the European Parliament, that if you are a stakeholder, then, as you said, try to look long term and actually try to intervene and explain your concerns with the Commission before they put the legislative proposal on the table. That's the best option. So be informed. When you hear that they are preparing something, react immediately. And of course, if it's something on the table already, then again, well, it's still good time to react. But as I said, let's be constructive, open-minded, and understand. And also, it's the question. Let's always remember, because I think we sometimes lose it that this slogan of the EU being united in diversity, it's a like huge advantage, but it also means that when you address certain topics, it really differs from member state to member state, what is ambitious and what not. I will just give you one example, very much, I think, debated about phase-out date for new combustion engine cars. As we know, EU institutions agreed that it should be 2035. It's a kind of compromise. Now, in some member states, as we know, the reaction was that it's completely unacceptable, understandable, too early. Why do we do that? But at the same time, there are some countries, for example, Denmark, I learned it quite recently, where actually the date of 2035 is unacceptable, but for completely opposite reason, because as I understand, they have legislation which introduces similar provisions as from 2030. And it's very difficult for them to understand why do we have to wait additional 5 years and maybe giving some advantage to some industries or economies in other member states. So just I think it's really crucial for everyone, for stakeholders, but also working in the European Parliament, to remember that your perspective is just your perspective. It's very important. It can be very correct, but there are different point of views, and we somehow, if we are serious about the European Union and what we are doing here, we have to try to always try to bridge it and to find a compromise between this very, how can you merge 2030 and 2035, right? Or even 2040 actually, right? Because perhaps that would be the date maybe more acceptable for, so but you have to be at least conscious about it and think about it.
I see this very clearly across very different types of projects we work with our clients, and actually this line of diversity in Europe, there is not one line. Sometimes it's east-west, but sometimes it can be like a recent project on trade union rights we supported. The difference is north-south, and it's some things that are some things that are that have been already passed as a legislation for years in the northern countries are still up for debate in the southern countries, and for some other area of economy or legislation, you could have a totally different set of differences between countries. So,
and it's also it's actually I would say one of the biggest challenges I think of my work or my job, and actually working in the Parliament, I think, or broadly in Brussels. But at the same time, it's something that really makes this work so exciting and interesting, is this variety of as you said, like different layers of that impact actually our legislative work in national politics. Okay, you think in terms of one country more or less, and that's absolutely fine in most cases, right? And you have a national parliament where normally you have a clear majority supporting government and then opposition. And of course, then you have maybe some, depending again from country to country, maybe some bigger or smaller regional issues, but that's actually it, right? And in the European Parliament, you first of all, as I said already, try to think in terms of the whole EU first and foremost. Then of course, I mean, we all think also what is workable and acceptable for our home countries, And then you have, of course, divergence between political groups, but also within political groups, you have divisions again on between national lines. Then it's complemented by this regional dimension, maybe, or like European regional dimension. I mean, there's, as you said, north, south countries which are actually, let's say, on the borders of the EU, maybe have different perspective on certain issues than countries that are more in the middle, and so on and so on. And so and of course you don't have in the parliament, it goes without saying, you don't have a like clear, obvious majority for every topic. I mean, there are some natural majorities which you see like more frequently perhaps, but depending from topic to topic, it can change because I mean there is no coalition, right, in the parliament, and this is I mean one of the biggest lessons. But again, it's something what I really like in this job, that actually every new topic, every new legislation, every new file is like starting a little bit from the beginning in terms of building, support, for example, in the European Parliament, which also means that you should never ever, I mean, in general in life, but in the European Parliament even more, you should never ever burn your bridges, right? Because someone with whom you very much disagree on certain topic, because, for example, of this north-south division. Again, let's use an example which I always use of gas in energy policy. So normally, of course, EPP group and the Greens, they have completely different approach to gas and to the role of gas that gas can or should play or will play in EU energy mix. But at the same time, so here you can, of course, discuss it, try to find a compromise, but it's very difficult. But at the same time, when we are talking about gas in terms of energy security and, for example, over dependence on imports from one monopoly supplier from the east, which maybe now it's more and more history than the reality, but still. There, the Greens were very much aligned with our point of view, especially of members, let's say, and representatives of Central and Eastern Europe. So, as I said, I mean, it's you can disagree. You of course you try to push forward your point of view, but I think what is absolutely crucial, and I think what makes EU politics so interesting and so different than national politics, that it's not that much matter of force. It's much more a matter of dialogue, trying to find compromise, to understand each other. Because as we use this example of Denmark and Poland of car engines, it's not that certain perspective is better or worse. It's just different context, different reality, and well, we have to find a way.
Someone once said that working in politics is like walking through a minefield, and you have to be a born diplomat to survive. So I wanted to ask you, maybe not if you agree with this statement, because I'm sure you do, but if you could give us a specific example how you have used your diplomatic negotiation skills to solve some challenging situation, to solve a challenge, like putting together two sides that are maybe not willing to cooperate.
Well, it's difficult maybe for me to give you one very precise example, because, as I said, I mean, pretty much all all our work, it's negotiating each and every day. But I think that is it a minefield? Yeah, maybe yes, maybe slightly more, as I said, in national politics. But I think what is really key is to really have this open-minded approach. Of course, there are some people or political groups which are not really interested in finding a compromise or finding a solution which is what we believe good for European project, EU member states. But in general, if you agree that everyone is somehow open-minded and have also good intentions at the end of the day, because as I said, but maybe different perspective or beliefs for some because of his or her experience that something is much more important than something else or much more problematic than something else. It's at the end of the day always a matter of trying to to explain it, to understand it, and I think if you look at every piece of EU legislation and what is coming out of the Parliament is actually exactly the effect of this kind of approach and work, right? That everyone had to give up something, but at the end of the day, it's like always they say perfect compromise, right? That when anyone is like really happy, and of course it's better when everyone is slightly happy, at least, and it's possible, but yeah, definitely diplomatic skills and negotiating skills are something what is needed and what you also will develop even if you don't have them that much at the beginning. You will certainly develop them because otherwise you will not survive here.
One more thing I wanted to go back to, because you said that the minefield could be a better example of the national politics. Why do you think is that and this is not only Poland specific? I think it's same. It works same for every member state. Why do you think are the national politics from the EU politics so different in terms of the political culture?
I think I would name two factors, let's say, which we already somehow touched upon. First one, I think it's what is really different and really somehow important is that you don't have this logic of government being supported by majority, and actually this majority can enforce whatever they want. Of course, depending from country to country and maybe party, it's done in a, let's say, more kind, civilized way, and sometimes it's really like tough force that is introducing something, and then those who are in power change, but the same logic applies again. And this is something which does not exist in the Parliament, as I said. There are, of course, you could define where is more or less majority, let's say, on most substantial issues, but still from topic to topic, it really depends. And I think this is something. I was never involved myself too much in national politics, but I have an impression that without, of course, disclosing names, but I even saw some politicians coming, for example, from Poland, from national politics, and there are positive examples that you see that the approach changed throughout the term, actually, when they are coming, more with the logic. Okay, so where is the majority? How we can enforce? What is a compromise amendment? Why do we need compromise? No, we don't want to compromise. We just want to force our point of view. But then you realize that no, it's how it works here, and that there is certain logic and explanation why it works like that. And second, it's slightly related. It's that you simply see when you come, like whenever you go abroad, right? Or you see that, as I said, there are different perspectives, completely different, experiences, points of view, history. Economical development, name it, and it all influences. And as I said, it's not about that this country is better than that country, or this solution is ultimately better than the other. It's just that there's really we are united again. We are united in diversity, and so this diversity is an asset, but also something that we have to work with when looking for new solutions, facing new problems, challenges, and so on.
So what will be the main challenges for the ITRE committee for the year that has already begun, 2023? And where do you see the biggest chance to speed things up and find compromise?
Well, I think from point of view of ITRE committee, there will be two such topics. One, both of them we already mentioned. So one is the electricity market design, which the proposal should be published by the Commission in mid-March. And the ambition, as I understand, is to finalize it before the end of the year. And second part, where Mr. Buzek is personally very, very much involved, because he's rapporteur for the regulation and shadow rapporteur for the directive, is the gas and hydrogen package, which we see now. Maybe not so it's from the beginning, but the others, as you mentioned, media maybe start realizing that gas and hydrogen package sounds like something very technical, but at the end of the day, it's not about hydrogen or green gas. It's, as a matter of fact, a question of actually industry staying in Europe or not. If there is no green hydrogen, no way to decarbonize production processes, together with incentives that are now available in the United States, for example, there is I think a real risk that at least some of these industries could move away. This is what is at stake. Of course, it will take time still to implement these provisions, but I think the sooner we are able to send a clear signal that, okay, we have rules in place, how do we want to incentivize, for example, green hydrogen production, how do we want to help its development and also and utilization, I think the better for the industry, for the economy, for jobs in Europe at the end. So I think that's two biggest topics, and they are of course related with, as I said, the general EU industrial strategy. Again, that was a topic that maybe some would thought it's for Brussels nerds, and now after the Inflation Reduction Act proposed and introduced in the States, we realized that maybe we also need an answer for this.
And I think that it also may be a little bit more easy to address those topics, to discuss them in a broader perspective, also outside of the nerd, as you said, Brussels energy crowd. Because I believe there is now, after what we've been through in the past year, after this need to actually educate yourself about how the energy market actually works. I think more people who you even might be dealing with now understand that it's not always that obvious as you would think. Ryszard, I would like to finish with one more question, because our listeners are also aspiring EU bubble insiders, people who are looking to pursue careers in Brussels. What would you say are the skills and the desired skills right now for someone who would like to pursue a career? How to kick off your career if you want to maybe end up in a similar position like yours, working for the Parliament or other institutions, because I believe that the technological revolution, also anything that happened in the recent years, it has changed a lot, and this job right now, working in the institutions, requires some old but also some new skills. What would you advise to someone who's looking to do that?
Well, first, coming back to what you said, that it's technology changed our work. I mean, I've been working in the Parliament since 2009, and so okay, it's like 14 years now, and well, even in this time period, I remember that things we are now laughing with younger colleagues that they are not really aware of. For example, amendments that are tabled by MEPs, and you would have to, like, if you have 10 MEPs supporting one amendment, you have to run different offices, different buildings, to have a physical signature of each and every MEP, then to fax it to the ITRE secretariat, make ideally a call to make sure, because with fax you never know whether it all is fine or not, and then you put this amendment into archives or somewhere to then remember what was actually tabled. And now it's all digital. With one click, 20 MEPs can co-sign if they wish an amendment at the same moment, pretty much. Also, in terms of course, doing research for an MEP, I really don't. I cannot even imagine how it was possible to do without internet and this very easy access to knowledge, to different sources, which of course you have to then check and so on. But it's really very very easy, most of the times. And in terms of skills and how to plan it, well, I would say first of all, what I see in Brussels is that really there's no one way to go, and there are people with very, very different background, like life experience, and that for different reasons actually came to Brussels, and then there are a lot of people, almost everyone, including myself, actually, we all come to Brussels for 1 or 2 years, and then you realize that it's more than a decade, for example. So there is, I would say, not like one size fits all approach that you have to graduate from I don't know, certain university or be specialized in very specific area. It really depends. But I think what is crucial at the end of the day is what we discussed a lot today. So this open-minded approach and some negotiating skills and rather solution based approach than problem-based approach. And I think this really helps tremendously because then even if it's challenging, even if it's like time-consuming, I think at the end of the day you can find some satisfaction in it and really enjoy it at the end of the day. And I mean, if you don't like your job, then it's then you have a problem. No?
Isn't that the most important part of it, right? To just enjoy what you're doing.
Exactly.
Ryszard, thank you very much.
I hope our listeners will enjoy.
I'm sure they did after listening to our conversation. There's a lot to learn from you. And once again, thank you for your time. And to everyone watching or listening, please subscribe to our newsletter, which comes out every second week. And each newsletter, apart from the podcast, is really comprehensive overview of the latest trends, insights, everything you need to know to be a better insider and to be better at your job within the EU bubble. So I hope everyone is enjoying it. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.